Welcome to Jason Sports. I'm your host, Joe Chap, Detroit Lions News Podcast. The divisional round is set. It's the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions will be playing the Commanders on Saturday, January 18th at Ford Field for all the marbles to go to NFC Championship game. It's going to be a huge game for the Detroit Lions. When we talk about the Detroit Lions and when we talk about what the Detroit Lions are able to do, um, the one thing you could sit and talk about is Jayden Daniels. Obviously, Jayden Daniels is the first thing that comes off when you talk about the Commanders. He's a definite good player. He could beat you in many different ways. He's a fantastic. He's fantastic outside the pocket. He's very clutch. But what I say about that is he's really good in the fourth quarter. He does a really damn good job. Detroit opens up as an 8.5 point favorite over the Commanders. So this is a game that the Vegas is saying you're a better team than the Commanders. And there's two things that we're gonna have to figure out before game time. Obviously, the main thing you want to look at with this Detroit Lions team is how they set the edge and how big that is against Jayden Daniels. They had a problem with that with Josh Allen, um, very much so. But they got to figure that out. And Aaron Glenn had a great defensive game plan last week. I said I imagine he's going to have a great game plan this week against Jayden Daniels because of how great he is, how tough he is, and how tough he is to play against. And when he gets outside the pocket, he can make things happen. We've seen it earlier today, earlier in the game where he got outside the pocket with his speed. He threw it back across his body, and he got a first down. That's what Jayden Daniels is able to do. Another thing Daniels is able to do is he can run. So he can beat you with that. So having a guy like Ife Melifonwu being a quarterback spy, as you would say, they really don't do quarterback spies because that could blow up in your face too. But they're going to have someone trying to shadow Jayden Daniels who has the size and the speed, and that's not usual with other teams. But I think the Detroit Lions have those guys. They have Brian Branch, they have Kirby Joseph. They're not going to put Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch in the up in the box, but they can put Ife Melifonwu, and that would be a good person to put in the box against Jayden Daniels. Obviously, when you look at the Commanders, though, the Detroit Lions have an obvious advantage over the Commanders with their offensive line. The Detroit Lions offensive line versus the Commanders defensive line. The Washington Commanders have been known to be susceptible in the run game. So getting Montgomery back with this Detroit Lions offensive line, with Jahmyr Gibbs rolling like he is, this could be a very problematic matchup for the the Washington Commanders. Look, I just threw this out here because I'm like, look, I want to talk about it. We got a lot to talk about. We're gonna have a lot to talk about this week because we're gonna have a podcast tomorrow. We're probably gonna have podcasts every day. We will definitely have videos coming out every day on JC Sports. So stay tuned to that. But just wanted to talk about this game because obviously I think all of us, myself included, we thought maybe we'd be playing the Vikings or the Rams. And then you see the Commanders upset the Buccaneers, and now you're going to be playing the Buccaneers. And look, this might be the perfect prime up game for the Detroit Lions. And what I say by that is when you play the Jayden Daniels, he is a guy who can get outside the pocket. He can make things happen with his feet. And if you're able to stop him, it's a good prime up if you were to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Because we all know the Philadelphia Eagles are they're a team that I think could be in the NFC Championship game, but it's a little bit of a prime up if you do play the Eagles. This is the type of quarterback you will play in the NFC Championship game. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for Aaron Glenn. Obviously we know Aaron Glenn's probably going to get a coaching job, but Aaron Glenn's going to coach up his team. He's going to have the right game plan for the defense. And we're going to see exactly what Aaron Glenn is capable of, what this defense is capable of. I mean, obviously, last week, the last time they played against the Minnesota Vikings, they had a great game plan to put together. And if Aaron Glenn continues to do what he did in the Minnesota Vikings game, I feel really comfortable with this game. If he doesn't, and he allows in this team, this defense, defensive line, the edge players, they allow Jayden Daniels to get outside the pocket. That could be a problematic. So having a guy like Zadarius Smith on the edge for those guys in the defensive line is a pretty critical thing. So, do I like this matchup? It's scary from the Jayden Daniels perspective because of how good he can be, but we know the Detroit Lions are a damn good football team, and I'm not really worried about what Jayden Daniels can do. I'm more worried about how do the Detroit Lions stop Jayden Daniels from doing what he likes to do. You know, I thought Tampa Bay had a lot of chances to put the Commanders away tonight. They had a few turnovers. They had a few they were just disoriented on the offensive end, and the Commanders took advantage of it. And the Commanders have played a lot of clutch football. They played a lot of good football coming down the stretch. I mean, beating the Eagles, they did a damn good job there. Um, they're a tough team, and they'll be a tough match in Detroit. But Detroit should have the obvious um, advantage here. But just you look at these two teams, and the Commanders, they're a rebuilding team. But Dan Quinn is the same coach as Dan Campbell. He's in his second go around though, but he did coach a team to the Super Bowl, so they do have a Super Bowl type coach there. Cliff Kingsbury and his offense, they're doing a damn good job with Jayden Daniels. They Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, Brian Robinson. Those guys are pretty tough. But look, we have a lot of time to talk about the Detroit Lions and the Washington Commanders, and it's going to be a good game. But the divisional is set, so I want to know. Leave a comment below. What do you think about this game coming up with the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions? I want to know from you guys in the comments, and then we'll talk about it on the Detroit Lions News podcast on Jason Sports. So subscribe, follow, like, and all that stuff. Obviously, we have our podcast too, so search up anywhere you get your podcast at Detroit Lions News Podcast, Spotify, Apple, and then look at the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on Threads too, so you can go there too. But we will see you in the next video as we talk and podcast as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News podcast on the Jason Sports YouTube page.